This is
Right.
large, but this is female.
There were a couple of things that you said that I think I'd like to highlight.
Thank you.
First of all, we need to remember that this bill is in Senate,
Right.
okay? The Senate can still change the bill.
Right.
So what we have now may not be what gets put
Right.
in front of the government. And I forecast that it'll get passed. I mean, I think the level at which it passed the House makes me think that it's not gonna have that much of a problem in the Senate. That's number one. So we all have to kind of sit tight about, okay, that's what the law is actually gonna say. The second problem is, did you actually violate any law? Okay? And what this points out, okay, and I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with this bill, this decision, but what this points out is that this is an area, from my perspective, it's exciting, because a lot of this is gonna have to get duked out in court, okay? The legislature's not ever gonna do enough to make it so that this is gonna be a smooth ride for either side, through the courts. But what's exciting to me is that this is all new, and this is yet to be defined. And we collectively, and I mean humbly I say through me, have the opportunity to do the defining, with the right arguments in court, the right lawsuit or lawsuits. I think we still have an opportunity to sort of shape this law as it is to our benefit.
Yeah.
Using the right language in terms of, right, the language is the biggest,
Which is important.
right, the language.
Another topic we keep kind of dancing around, that this legislation, and especially the Georgia Grow Plan, didn't address at all, is the fact that I do have my Georgia medical marijuana card. And it clearly states in there multiple times that you're not allowed to handle anything above 0.3% THC. So does that mean a person that has a medical marijuana card can no longer be a processor or permittee?
That's a big problem. Well, and that's so, okay, that's a different aspect of the same thing we were talking about, because I've been approached by someone who was denied a gun permit flatly because they were medical marijuana.
Right, that's what I had heard about.
You know, and let me bake your noodle a little bit more. Let's say in 5 years' time that there's no longer Mitch McConnell in the Senate and the government sees the light, and we start to see a movement toward federally legalized marijuana. And let's say that the way that happens, the path to that roughly corresponds to the way hemp has been legalized, and that it's left to the states whether or not they individually want to legalize marijuana, okay? Then Georgia decides that they do, and you as a business owner naturally think, okay, now it's time to have a full-on dispensary. Federal government has already said that even though you legally had a medical marijuana card, okay, that may be an impediment to your receiving federal permission, blessing to be in that business. Businesses in the hemp industry are running into this problem now because they have, Colorado, California, they have a history of being in the marijuana industry, and the feds are telling them, no, you were in an illicit industry as far as the feds are concerned. So you have to be really careful about, you have to pick your battles there, and the feds are still gonna have to work that out. I think there are a lot of politicians at the federal level who are well-intentioned about this, and they're not stupid. I mean, the numbers say what direction this is gonna go. Right now, who I would term the second most powerful man in Washington, is a major roadblock to that. McConnell, for better or worse, is very, very defined as far as where he stands on legalizing marijuana, and he does not show any indication he's going to change. He's not going to be there forever. His party may not be in power forever. So, things change. They do. But that doesn't, it really just doesn't end the story. And as long as that is the story, there are huge problems, and we haven't really gotten into the marijuana side of things, but there's problems galore, and it starts with banking, which is a nightmare.
It's just as bad in
And
hemp.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Danielle can speak to that, because, she has just recently actually gotten a bank account for her company, I know, and they had a lot of problems finding hemp friendly, and I think Chase had some problems with that too, right? Yeah, so
You had to go out of state?
they find out you trade in cannabis, and, you know, big banks will shut you down without any warning. So
You can't get insurance, you know, I mean, there's all,
well, crop insurance actually you now can.
well, I'm
Under
talking about for
SDA,
the dispensaries.
but insurance for the dispensaries is insurance is a problem. I mean, there's all kinds of problems. I recently heard the owner of a pretty large hemp operation out of Colorado. I think it was called Aurora Gold. He was saying that their company just bought a large old bank because it had the big old vault, and they trade in cash. I mean, that's the only thing they can do. They can't take credit cards. They can't deposit checks. So all they can do is take cash and they put it in this vault. And then they have to, it used to be you had to make an appointment with the IRS to pay your taxes.
I got something.
Now they bring it in duffel bags with armed guards.
I have a question, and this goes back to my time working with the federal government. The UCC, Uniform Commercial Code, and dealing with secure transactions and banking. Now, we know that, from what I've learned, that the UCC governs this particular thing with secure transactions. How does that affect those who said, well, I have a constitutional right, when we know the UCC is what is actually the key element to making this thing happen with the banking issue? From what I've been
What's the
learning.
constitutional right you're saying you have?
Well, you know, you have, from what I've been learning, is that they say you have a constitutional right to do certain things under the so-called union. The 13 colonies who got their sovereignty from the British monarch and all these other things. So when you're doing things with the UCC, which is the way that you deal with banking, right? The banking issue is using different things that they're not telling the public about in terms of their, as you say, their rights, which are privileges, which can be revoked at any given time. So from a lawyer standpoint, does the UCC have any impact on what we're dealing with here regarding banking from your point of view?
I mean, you're getting really afield of the issues that I've personally dealt with or even really researched. But I will say, you know, UCC versus constitutional rights. I don't think that there's a lot of intersection of the two. If you want to be more specific as to what besides interstate commerce.
Well, the interstate commerce is the biggest issue, right? Because
Okay, but that's not a personal right.
Okay, right. You said it's not a personal. It's a privilege.
Interstate commerce is more, interstate commerce is something that's guaranteed in the Constitution, but it's not my right. I don't have a right to interstate commerce, or not necessarily personal rights.
I got something I wanted to let you know about.
Sure.
In California, this is like 2 weeks ago, the Cannabis Control Bureau of Cannabis Control in California has just stated that the 280 EZ, this is the IRS problem that you're dealing with the
taxes, yeah.
Okay, it doesn't apply to state chartered banks. And so they're because they're directing all of the cannabis businesses in California to engage in electronic banking, and they're directing everyone to do banks with
That's right. These banking issues really only come up with FDIC insured banks. That's been sort of a haven as local and community banks, credit unions, et cetera. And Colorado's actually been really at the forefront of this in terms of what they're allowing their banking to do and all of that. But then you run into the issue of FDIC insurance, and
right.
coronavirus gets work, market tanks, everybody makes a run on the banks, and those companies are not protected by the federal government.
Right.
I also thought it was really interesting, and this really does, finance gets way to a field of where my expertise lies, but I heard hemp companies talking about the fact, or it's not hemp, but specifically marijuana companies talking about the fact that they're not able to take any business deductions in their taxes because it's an illicit business as far as the feds are concerned.
So then why would you be paying taxes on an illicit business in the first place?
They're so pissed.
Separate question.
I'm so confused.
Logical, the banking thing, from my own experience, it's
when I was in California, we were trying to open up a bank in California, just purely hemp company. And we went to Bank of the West, and because our friends in Colorado had opened up an account, no problem, you know, we're fine. So like, great. We went to the bank in California, and they said, no, we're not doing it. So I think it's also just based upon which state and their regulations within the state in which the same bank, even if it's a national bank, might be working in. So with the bank that I am with now is First Federal, which is a national charter bank. So it actually works in every state as a charter bank, almost like your credit union, stuff like that. So more of those type of banks, I think, are gonna be the ones, and they're very cannabis hemp friendly. They're you know, actively trying to open bank accounts in the industry, and so that's kind of where I found was the best route with that. So if that
But
helps
do you have credit, well, let me ask this question a different way. Do you have legitimate credit card processing?
So with the processing, like I can get, they do like loans, credits, all the stuff that a normal bank would give you. As for like merch, like the merch services, they're actually this particular bank I'm working, they're building out their merch services department right now. But they're like, hey, if you need it, we have plenty of partners that do it, and that work in the hemp and cannabis space. So.
And if
Because
you wanna-
I'm being penalized by Square right now.
Well, if you
I'm
wanna
on
talk
their-
to me, if you wanna talk to me after I step down, don't trip. Promise I won't trip. I had a conversation not too long ago with another attorney who really focuses on banking issues in this industry. And I'd be happy to at least put you in touch with. She's in Philadelphia. She's pretty knowledgeable.
So regarding the banking, I did because I'm a nonprofit in LA. I opened up a bank, and they stopped me because I only focus on education. I don't even touch the plant. I just give them the education. Why would they do that if I'm not even, my hands are not even on the plant? I'm just giving knowledge and information. Did you know anything about that?
They're so scared of the money laundering statute that I'll give you another example. I opened a bank account not too long ago with a different bank, and I was having a just sort of informal conversation with the guy I was opening the account with. It's a smaller community type bank.
Right.
And he said, so what kind of work do you do? Well, this, that, and the other. I do criminal, and I'm moving into this regulatory area. I mean, with that kind of conversation, I wasn't really going to jump out and say I'm pushing a bit toward more of a cannabis practice. We went on and we're talking about something else, and the subject of cannabis came up, and I said that I knew of some businesses that were having a lot of trouble even though hemp was totally legal, and he said, yeah, the banks are just not going to touch it. And he actually explained to me that they had a lawyer who was a lobbyist for the cannabis industry. Now they're not touching anything. They're just advocating.
Right.
And they shut that lawyer's account down and denied him an account.
Wow.
Which is preposterous to me, speaking as someone who's defended a lot of people in the past who were accused of dealing in illicit drugs. I'm not sure what the difference
their
is.
accounts down.
You know? So, I mean, that seems extreme to me, but banks are conservative. It's just, you're not going to change that. And, I mean, again, I don't want to talk out my ass or anything like that. This is not my area of expertise. But banking is just going to continue to be a massive headache in the entire cannabis industry, because I just don't think, the banks aren't sure what to do. A lot of people complain that the Department of Treasury is not doing enough, and the FDA, the USDA are not doing enough to reassure everyone that what they're doing is completely above board. It's not going to be a problem. I mean, most states, I know, for instance, California doesn't issue marijuana grow licenses and hemp grow licenses. You have one or the other, both.
Recreation.
So, and the chances of these two running into each other are just pretty low. It's just the industry as a whole scares the hell out of them. Any other questions?
Can we take a break? and just shift the energy real quick and then get you back on for questions. It's very generous. We've been talking
bullet
for over
round,
an hour.
okay.
So just for like 5-10 minutes, we're just gonna shift the energy, and then he's gonna come back on and field some questions and then give us like 3 big points that we can start calling today and tomorrow as much as possible, leaving messages about the issues with HB847. So the first thing that I thought would be fun to just like bring back the hemp industry is to read a letter written over 100 years ago from some people who were really getting into the hemp industry at the time, just to kind of imagine ourselves being there and how like it was not illegal, like nothing was an issue. It's a little out of context, but this is in the book The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and it's an exchange between people working on creating hemp paper with hemp and the decorticator. So this is to Mr. Script. Well, I'll just read it. It was about getting off of fossil fuels and getting off of cutting down trees for paper. Dear Mr. Scripps, your letter of the 25th duly came to hand. I have been laid up for the last 3 weeks or more, contracted a very severe cold with a resultant severe congestion in the head, and am just now commencing to get a little better. I herewith enclose some photographs of the hemp grown this year on one of my Imperial Valley ranches. This is in California. This hemp evidently runs 12 to 14 feet in height. I am informed that this is the best hemp crop ever produced in the United States. I understand that the Kentucky hemp runs in height only from 6 to 8 feet. This hemp is now being decorticated, and in a couple of weeks I will have some definite information on the value of the crop and on the amount of herds per acre available for paper making. Ding. The one picture shows Rainey and hemp. He sent pictures. This picture was taken in Lakeside, where Mr. Schlichten is developing a large number of Rainey plants in Germany. There is also growing this year 2 crops of hemp to demonstrate whether that is a feasible proposition or not. I understand that he is now convinced that along the coast, or rather a little in from the coast, 2 crops of hemp per year can be grown. It is doubtful whether this can be done in Imperial Valley because of the weather being too hot in the summer for the second crop. The Rainey evidently does fine at Lakeside. These 2 crops in Southern California will, I believe, change the whole agricultural situation there. Of course, coupled with the Schlichten decorticating machine. I would ask you to kindly return the enclosed photos after you have looked them over. So, in summary here on the side, it says, in August, Timken sent photographs of his 12 to 14 foot tall hemp fields to Scripps. He had hopes just as tall for his decorticated hemp. He wrote Scripps that business, I believe, is one that is worthy of any man devoting his time and money to. You know, Lord Bacon had a theory, or philosophy, that in this industrial age, the real benefactor of mankind was not one who evolved or preached a beautiful theory, but one who assisted in clothing and feeding the world more economically than in the past. Because that means shorter working hours, and shorter working hours eventually means the spiritual development of the world. So,
Well, I guess when you started that, you might have had a contraction of the coronavirus, it sounds like.
Well,
Suggested, wasn't he?
yeah, and the hemp seeds probably healed him.
Exactly.
So, I wanted to do a sacred agreement with everyone before we got back with Mark. It's posted, I just posted it in the event page on Facebook if you want to bring it up on your phones. Or you can come up here and I can bring it up on the computer. It's just like a few paragraphs that talk about what our agreement is for hemp. I'm really just feeling more and more that we just need to grow our own. I think I would love to talk to you about this, Mark, but according to the Supreme Court, you can grow cannabis as sacrament legally. So if we start a cannabis church here, that, you know, it doesn't look like a dispensary, but like seriously, we're growing hemp in a field and we're making fuel and we're making clothing and we're feeding the people with it. I really want to figure out a way to do that. So anyway, sacred agreement.
Kind of like we did in California.
Yeah?
We did that same thing.
Good. Okay. Let's keep doing that, because
I make an outstanding agreement to honor and respect cannabis as a plant for food, free to be planted, harvested, and processed by all. I break any past contracts known or unbeknownst to me that has taken away my freedoms and securities by, but not limited to, being punished, shamed, lied to, neglected, shocked, blocked, and manipulated in regards to my personal relationship with and awareness of the cannabis plant. I am committed to spreading education about the many uses of cannabis, from fuel to paper, rope, fiber, medicine, technology, and ceremony. I believe we all stand and work together to reveal the truth about cannabis and help each other heal from the great deception, lies, punishment, and withholding of information that has affected the quality of our health and prosperity, relationships, communications, and camaraderie. My healthy, prosperous life deserves honor and devotion, and I honor my life. And it is my choice to use cannabis if it can contribute to and sustain this. I release any and all shame and fear if it's connected to this belief. I agree to honor my beliefs and acknowledge new agreements for the support and protection of our basic human rights in regard to protecting and caring for ourselves, others, Earth, and Earth's resources. I further agree to and believe that it is my right and any human's right to grow cannabis in a personal garden, family, and/or industrial farm. All suppression in the form of laws or otherwise that is out of agreement with this new contract is in violation of our beliefs, and it's my responsibility to make sure there's relief and this is heard far and wide until total liberation is achieved. This is my sacred agreement and commitment, and I see that it is good. So because the meeting went so long, the camera got full, but we have some bullet points for you. Number one, this is a compliment. This bill does a really good job of clarifying that simply packaging hemp after you harvest it does not require a processing permit. That's really good news for the farmers in this state that probably don't have $25,000 to get a processing license. Number two, the problem is that Georgia farms and businesses are put at an economic disadvantage to farmers and businesses in other states. You're sending money that could be here in Georgia back to California, North Carolina, Illinois, Tennessee, and Colorado. Number three, you need to rethink the money involved with this maintaining a processing permit. This is not multinational corporations. These are small startup businesses. A lot of them are farm-based, community-based, not multi-million-dollar corporations. They are businesses that worked hard on a 5-year plan and probably are being left $165,000 behind with these annual fees. Oh, sorry for the typos, people. I was rushing.